Redditors who massively messed up at work. What happened? I dropped a screw inside the motor of a TGV train. Oh man, we spent half an hour trying to catch it by moving a magnetic stick inside the crankshaft, with oil spilling everywhere. The engine was new and about to be mounted on a train that was supposed to run later in the day. I was so terrified I would possibly cause quite a lot of trouble since no other train or engine was available. Shout out to my manager who finally got that screw and definitely deserved his half of a dozen of croissants the next morning. Man, that's gotta be one of the worst things about working with cars or computers or any sort of like electronics or mechanical part, is like you drop that one tiny little screw down the endless maze of parts, and now everything is screwed. Controls engineer. Made a copy-paste error while programming, and a 2 was a 3. So one machine tagged at 3 was waiting for conditions of 2. So naturally, the lift moved when it thought it should and crashed into another machine. Of course, I'm having to stand there figuring out the issue while maintenance is up there replacing busted parts. But because I made 1,000 changes, it didn't click fast enough, and well, it happened again. Yeah, I know that programmers always have a really hard time like bug fixing things because there's just thousands of lines of code and they've got to find what little tiny error is causing the problem. But that would really suck if that error was actually like a catastrophic problem. Working the stockroom at Walmart, grabbed a Pepsi pallet with the forklift and didn't realize it was a short pallet. The forks came out the other side and through to the pallet of glass Coke bottles it was up against. When I lifted the Pepsi, the Coke came up with it and dumped the entire unwrapped pallet of glass bottles, spilling all that sticky soda on the floor. That mess was hell to clean up. However, the vendor had to eat the cost because the store's posted policy is that they cannot leave unwrapped pallets unless it is being worked. Yeah, I think we've all seen at least a few videos of forklifts causing mass destruction. During the first week of my job in animation, after I graduated, I had to move a bunch of scene files from one server to another. The files were heavy, so I was told to just cut and paste them to make it faster. I accidentally put them in the wrong area, and without thinking, just deleted them. Went back to move the files again. They weren't there. I'd forgotten I hadn't copied them. I lost 5 minutes of full animation. My longtime friend who recommended me for the job got in trouble because his backups didn't catch the files, and my direct supervisor worked for 21 days straight to help redo all the animation. The studio and everyone involved were way nicer to me about it than I expected. I kept my job, and I brought in donuts for the whole crew for a week after, but it was an awful start. You know, I've actually run into similar problems like this before, because so one of my jobs is that I go and like measure buildings. So I just go and like measure the whole floor plan inside and out, just an entire building. And I found the fastest way to do that is to take a camera, actually this camera, with me, and just record the whole thing while I'm calling out measurements. Well, one of the video files, which was like half of a building, got messed up and I didn't catch it in time and I couldn't fix it. And so the drawings were just missing like half of the building. Accidentally left out the move next method on a loop that sent out an email broadcast, which meant it mail bombed the first recipient in the loop until we realized what was happening and killed the process. The CEO's email was the first email address in the loop. He was a jerk anyway, and was absolutely incoherent with rage when his Outlook crashed when downloading 15,000 emails, inviting him to take a satisfaction survey. Good thing it was only a test. Well, something tells me if he decides to fill out that survey 15,000 times, you're not going to get a very good review. My first day working at a coffee shop, I left my Sharpie in the oven. Finally found it when trying to warm a sandwich and had to shut the whole thing down to be cleaned. It smelled like a chemical weapon. Out of all the places to set down your Sharpie, why would you ever set it down in the oven? I worked in a pizza place and they caught me eating olives on camera. It wasn't 2 to 3 olives. I could eat like 1,000 olives in a shift. I really don't know why, and it's a time in my life I want to forget. I don't know why olives would be the one thing that you'd want to eat the most. I was promoted to terminal manager, and I was a dumb 25-year-old idealist. We had an essential employee, a mechanic, who kept our fleet of trucks running. At least that was his job description. Less than a month on the job, it came to my attention that he was a working alcoholic, and his work on our fleet was underwhelming. My boss told me to fire him once we had a new mechanic ready to come in. I told the old mechanic that he should probably start looking for a new work if he couldn't do the job. Word got back to him through the pipeline that he was going to be fired. I went to a bar with my assistant manager after working 40 days straight, and lo and behold, the mechanic showed up. Long story short, the mechanic attempted to abduct me with his adult son and dump my body in a frozen lake. The whole thing became a large, dramatic BS event that put me in the hospital for a few hours, and we both lost our jobs. Okay, so you almost fired a guy and then almost got killed in the process. So this was my first real job out of uni, so I was early 20s. I had been working at a pharma company for a few months, and a guy, Andy, set me up on a system that the whole company, of 100K plus, used to catalog documents and updates on drugs we sold. My only job was to go through and find old drugs that we didn't sell anymore and change their settings so that they were invisible to everyone, just to make everything a bit tidier. I had been doing this for 2 days when, somehow, I managed to set it so that the entire database was locked out to everyone in the company, and I was the only person with access. Within minutes, I was getting calls from people all over the world, all very polite, saying, "Hi there, I'm trying to add records to drug A and I can't make changes. I can see you're the admin, can you give me access rights?" I was frantically trying to add people on, one by one, whilst screening my calls and watching as emails started flooding my inbox. I was panicking so hard, and just as I realized this was not going to work, I was added to a meeting about the system. It was literally me, Andy, and 3 senior managers. I was freaking out. I decided to just ignore the call. Stupid, I know, but I was 21 and terrified. About 3 minutes in, Andy arrived at my desk. "Gray, we're in a call. Did you see my invite?" I act dumb and tell him I'm just dialing in, but he was very chipper, which made me suspicious. Anyway, I dial in, and the head of the tech is monologuing about how he has been saying for months that this software is overloaded, and how any minute it's going to implode on itself. And Andy is agreeing with them, that this is the very reason he asked me to remove the listings in the first place. I listen quietly, and it turns out that they are all convinced the software did this to itself, and the only people who still have access rights are the people who were logged in at the time it freaked out. As time goes on, it becomes apparent that they all think I'm some kind of specialist on the system. Andy keeps mentioning that I was working on a project for him, and they keep saying, "Gray can take care of this bit. We'll flag this for Gray." Fortunately for me, I knew what they meant each time. It was like I was listening to a foreign language. And then, just when they spoke English, they assigned that bit to me. 3 days later, they had fixed the system, and in that time, I had removed old users and finished removing the unused drugs, which they were still convinced that was the reason it shut down to begin with. As a result, I got a bonus. I got a mention on the CEO email for assisting on the crisis, and my end-of-year meeting they added the fact that I was an expert in the system to my job description. Not bad for a 21-year-old who was too dumb to process that clicking yes on a box marked, "Do you want to remove all access rights for 100 plus users?" was a terrible idea. Wow, so you accidentally managed to hack in and destroy your entire company's system, and you got a raise for it. You know, maybe you are an expert at this. I work at a jail. We have things called keep-aparts to keep people away from each other since they may have conflict on the street or otherwise. I accidentally let these 2 guys go in the same room together. Guy number 1 is freaking massive. Guy number 2 is small and allegedly killed guy number 1's friend. So guy number 2 doesn't know number 1, but number 1 who knows who he is and what he allegedly did. So they go into the room with about 30 other people, and after about 20 minutes, guy number 1 casually walks over to number 2 and beats the ever-loving crap out of him. Easily could have killed him. Luckily we stopped it before it got worse, but I still messed up massively. Not related, but guy number 1 was recently killed by his friend when they were drunk and his friends accidentally shot him in the head. Now guy number 1's friend is in jail for murder. You know, prison just sounds like a really nice place, full of very nice people. I mixed bleach and ammonia. Had to evacuate the restaurant. See, I don't know why this keeps coming up. It's almost like a meme at this point that's like, okay, don't mix bleach and ammonia because it creates mustard gas. It's like, why do so many people just have to experiment and try this out? I was a nanny. A little 2-year-old I was watching fell down and hit the back of her head on the concrete. I rushed over to her, but she didn't move or blink, just laid on her back motionless. I tried to check for breathing and pulse, and pretty much blanked on everything I'd ever learned in CPR and first aid training in my panic. She seriously looked dead. I screamed for help, the neighbors came running, I told them to call an ambulance. The police, fire department, ambulance showed up within minutes. She was rushed to the hospital and a million tests were run. Turns out she barely even had a bruise. No concussion, no seizure, no injury, nothing. The doctor said she probably just got scared and froze, for just long enough for me to lose it. Her parents were charged $5,000 to tell them their child got surprised. Ah, well, better safe than sorry, I guess. You know, babysitting can be kind of a crappy job in a way because, like, the stakes can be so high, yet you're usually not getting paid that much for it. I was a bartender. I knocked down the entire top shelf. Thousands of dollars in liquor. I didn't get in trouble. The boss just built a stronger shelf. He found it hilarious that the only thing I saved was a $6 bottle of slow gin that happened to be on the wrong shelf. Yeah, usually if a shelf falls down, most people aren't to blame unless they were like hanging on it. One time I got woken up in the middle of the night because Faye was just walking on a shelf I had, and at 3 a.m. the whole thing just like detached from the wall. It scared her pretty bad. I worked as an apprentice in an IT and printer repair office. We had a tech apprentice last year who finished his education and sent out an email to everyone, around 20 people including management, saying that it was his last day and thank you to everyone. We got along pretty well, we're around the same age, and we both hated our jobs and how we were treated, so I replied with that, "Man, I wish that were me," DeviantArt comment meme. I realized an hour later that I hit reply to all instead of reply, and sent it out to the entire office. Almost crapped my pants. Luckily, no one brought it up except 1 to 2 coworkers I'm on good terms with, who found it funny. But man, I wanted to die. Yeah, I've noticed in my experience that employers don't really like it when you express how much you hate working there. I accepted 20 fake $100 bills because I hadn't been taught how to spot fakes. You know, it kind of sucks whenever you're working retail and they come out with like a new model of the $100 bill or just any bill. Because like you see it for the first time and you're like, I've never seen this before, is this even real? Or if you see one that's like a super old model too, you're just like, I don't know if I could take this. I worked in a nice steakhouse. The first week, I accidentally put salt in the sugar bowls and sugar in the salt shakers. Customers started to complain about their sweet steaks and salty coffees. We had to pull all the salt and sugar from each table. My last day as a waiter. Man, this sounds too much like something that would just happen on a sitcom. Like, do you just live in a cartoon? A customer got the best of me. I worked upper-level customer service for an Australian winery conglomerate that shall remain unnamed. They owned a bunch of exclusive brands, but only had a team of 6 or 7 customer service reps to service them all. 2 of us got paid $1 an hour more to be upper-level customer service, and take escalations, which is fancy talk for get crapped on by the wealthy. A customer from their top brand made an online purchase, which we shipped immediately. He decided he was upset about that, as we should have read his mind and known he wanted it 3 months later. Anyway, he called me a retard, so I canceled his order, his wine club membership, and deleted his customer profile. I was not let go due to them literally needing me to keep the department running, but my manager burst a blood vessel in his eye. So it's seen as being like really cool if somebody's like, oh, I don't take crap from anyone. But if you work in customer service and you have the attitude of I don't take crap from anyone, you're probably not going to last very long. Concessions at a movie theater. I was making popcorn, but I had learned that if we used a bit more seasoning and oil, the popcorn tasted insanely better. What I didn't know is the popcorn machine had broken earlier and wasn't stirring the popcorn anymore. So after I had made a new batch and no popcorn coming out, I decided to check on the machine and a hot glob of oil flew into my eye. Started cussing and screaming in front of a whole bunch of customers and got rushed into the back to wash my eye out. I guess the popcorn machine was not happy that you tried to change the recipe. Not me, but I worked at a place that made wiring harnesses. Dude's 4th-ish day, he's running the wire cutting machine. Suddenly says he's sick and leaves. Never came back. He absolutely messed up everything on the cut. What's sad is he wouldn't have been fired or even been in trouble. He didn't have to leave. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a funny response. It's like, oh, I made a mistake. Hey, I'll be back, and just disappear forever. Chemistry teacher here. On my first day of teaching, I set my classroom on fire after some unfortunate incidents involving sodium, water, and a glass tank. The problem was that the glass tank was too big, so the hydrogen gas got to build up to a decent amount. Then suddenly, kaboom! The glass tank exploded, there was shattered glass everywhere and hit the students, who were all wearing safety glasses. A column of water grew from the glass tank to the ceiling, and the ceiling started to burn. After a few moments, the fire died out and the fire alarm was loud, and I had to make sure all the students were okay, which they were. It ended up being one of my funniest classes to teach for many years. The students absolutely loved it. I was a bit of a nervous wreck for a few hours. The worst thing, in hindsight, is all of the comments saying things like, you started your career with a bang, and stuff like that. Hey, when teaching people, sometimes you also have to teach people what not to do. I worked at a retail store when 2 women walked by me and said, hey, tell your coworker that she gave us excellent service, on their way out of the store. I told my coworker about it afterwards and she said, who were they? And for some reason my dumb self said, I'm not sure, but they were 2 heavy-set women. Then described what they were wearing, and my coworker said, oh, that was my mom and my aunt. I've never been more embarrassed in my life. Well, hopefully this starts off your holiday week well. Hope all of you have no catastrophic failures at your jobs anytime soon.